It was the onesie that did it. Not a dramatic scream, not a slamming door, just a pale blue cotton onesie folded too neatly inside a drawer I never opened. It was in the guest bedroom, bottom drawer of the oak dresser we kept meaning to replace. I had been looking for an old set of headphones, something mindless. The drawer was stuck, warped from years of humidity. When I finally yanked it open, it came loose with a soft crack, and there it was, folded perfectly, smelling faintly of lavender and something else. A baby's onesie with little gray elephants walking across the chest, tags still attached, and right next to it, a card. Blank on the front, soft watercolor clouds, the kind you find in boutique shops that sell overpriced candles and passive-aggressive mugs. I opened it with one hand, not knowing why. Inside, in her handwriting, "Can't wait for our forever. You'll be such a good dad." That was it. Nothing more. No name. No date. Just ink and implication. My mind didn't panic, it organized. It moved backward through time with eerie precision. She hadn't told anyone we were expecting. No gender reveal, no announcement, no ultrasound picture on the fridge. Just her telling me one morning, eyes wide with shaky joy, that she'd missed a period. That was 6 weeks ago. I remember the way she said it, like she was giving me a gift, wrapped in fear and hope. We sat on the bathroom floor and cried. At least, I did. She touched her stomach like she was trying to believe it herself. But now here I was, holding a note written for someone else, folded next to a onesie I had never seen her buy. She never told me about this. And that's what chilled me. The lie wasn't in what she said. It was in what she never let me see. That drawer wasn't for us. That onesie wasn't for our child. That card wasn't for me. I placed it all back exactly how I found it, careful with every fold. I closed the drawer slowly, silently, like covering a grave. Then I walked out of the room. The house felt different. The walls tighter. The floor colder. I passed the hallway mirror and caught my own face, not broken, not angry, just detached. Like someone had peeled the skin off my reality and left me staring at the bones. She came home 2 hours later, keys jangling, laughing on the phone with someone named Jess. She kissed my cheek absently and mentioned traffic. I said nothing. I cooked dinner like always. She rubbed her belly and asked if I'd thought about names. I said maybe. Then I watched her eat pasta with a smile that didn't quite fit her face. The onesie never came up. The card stayed buried. And I didn't ask. Because I didn't need to. The story had already told itself. Quietly. Efficiently. Like a needle sliding between ribs. No blood. Just truth. I knew in that moment what kind of woman I was living with. And more importantly, I knew exactly what kind of man I would become. She started sleeping on her side. Always the same side, back to me, shoulders tight, like her body was trying to unlearn mine. It wasn't sudden, it crept in, subtle, wrapped in soft excuses. Just hot tonight, she'd mumble, or my back's acting up. But it never shifted, never broke. Every night, that same curve of her spine turned away. I tried not to notice. Told myself I was imagining it, that I was overanalyzing. But then came the new bedtime routine. She used to read, or fall asleep to the hum of a show we both pretended to care about. Now she scrolled in silence, phone screen glowing like a secret lighthouse under the covers. I'd roll over, pretend to shift in my sleep, and watch the way she cradled it close, tilting away from me, thumb flicking in practiced rhythm. She locked it now. Always. Even left it face down on the counter, like the glass might betray her if the screen lit up. Once, I picked it up to move it off the charger so I could plug mine in. It buzzed in my hand, and before I could even glance, she snapped, "Careful with that," from across the room. Her tone had weight, not panic, calculation. She never used to care. Now it was sacred. She smiled more too, but not at me. At her phone. At the mirror. At the invisible audience she seemed to be performing for. It wasn't real joy, it was curated. Practiced. The kind of smile you give when you're already living in a version of your life where the truth doesn't matter anymore. We still had dinner together. Still said, "Love you," out of habit. Still kissed goodbye at the door. But it all felt hollow, like running fingers across the skin of a drum and calling it music. She started using words I'd never heard from her before. Boundaries. Personal growth. Emotional space. She'd read them somewhere, plucked from a podcast or a therapist blog. But they weren't for both of us. They were for her. Her transformation. Her freedom. I was just supposed to stand still while she evolved. Once, I made a joke about baby names. Said if it was a girl, she'd end up with her mom's stubbornness and my eyebrows. She laughed too hard, too long, then went quiet and said, We don't need to rush the name thing. There's still time. Her tone clipped, final. And just like that, the warmth left the room. Like someone had slammed a door in a silent house. There were more moments like that. Flickers of absence in the middle of routines that used to feel sacred. She forgot our dinner plans with my brother, claimed she'd never agreed, even though she had. Told my mother she hadn't been feeling well for weeks. But around her friends, she glowed. At baby showers, she posed with one hand under her belly and the other on her hip like a brand ambassador for new beginnings. She told them I was supportive. She said, we, all the time, but I was never in the picture. And then came the night I thought it would all break. She was in the shower. I was in the laundry room, pulling towels from the dryer, when I heard it, a chime. A soft, high-pitched ping from her phone on the couch. I shouldn't have looked. But I did. One glance. One fragment. A message preview from someone saved as a. No heart. No emoji. Just, still thinking about last night. Can't wait for next time. My stomach didn't drop. My heart didn't race. I just stood there, holding a damp towel, frozen in that sliver of time. The screen went dark again. No follow-up. No name. No proof. Just implication. Just another line in a story I was no longer allowed to read. I didn't confront her. Not then. Not even later that night when she lay beside me again, back turned, breathing shallow and slow. Instead, I stared at the ceiling. At the faint lines of old paint and the shadow of the ceiling fan spinning in slow rhythm. I counted every silent second between her breaths. I stopped believing. I stopped guessing. I just watched. Watched her float through the house like a well-dressed ghost. Watched her plan weekends away with the girls, book prenatal massages she didn't mention until after. Watched her smile at her reflection more than at me. I stopped asking questions. Because questions are invitations to lies. And I didn't want her lies anymore. I wanted the truth to finish writing itself. And it would. Eventually. They always do. It happened while sorting the nursery closet. She had left early for her yoga class, or that's what she called it now. I stayed behind to clean, to keep my hands busy while my mind drifted toward questions I had stopped asking out loud. The onesie in the guest room still haunted me, but I hadn't touched it again. Not yet. I was folding donated clothes from her baby shower, trying to pretend this was still my life, still my child, still my home. Then I found the sonogram. It wasn't hidden, just misplaced. Stuffed between two books in a small gift bag from her sister. I pulled it out gently, like it might fall apart in my hands. But it wasn't the image that caught me. It was the date. The timestamp in the bottom corner, printed by the imaging system itself. I stared at it, blinked, checked again. Then I walked to the fridge where our appointment card was pinned with a magnet shaped like a strawberry. It was still there. Our first ultrasound. Different date. 2 weeks off. I went back to the sonogram, studied the measurements, the patient ID. It was her name. No mistake. But this wasn't from the same visit. This wasn't from the clinic she told me about. This wasn't from a time I was present. I checked the medical folder in the file drawer we kept beneath the kitchen counter. It was meticulous because I organized it. Every scan, every test, every note filed in order. And this skin didn't exist anywhere in our records. My pulse didn't change. My hand stayed steady. I sat down at the table, the sonogram in one hand, the folder in the other, and I understood. She had gone back alone. She had confirmed something without me. She had chosen to make a decision, or worse, a declaration, with someone else in mind. This wasn't just betrayal. This was strategy. She was building 2 timelines. One for me to live in, one for someone else to believe in. I looked closer at the patient barcode, memorized it, then opened her laptop, the one she barely used except for streaming shows and answering work emails. I knew her password. She'd never changed it. I searched the document folder. She didn't keep a journal, but she did keep a notes file, an open, lazy compilation of thoughts and baby names, and, buried halfway down, reminders. Ultrasound 10/12. Don't show him that one. Say clinic had tech issue. Use the one from October 26th for fridge. I stared at those words, each one a bullet without sound. And then I saw the other note, one line down. Still not sure who's the father. Wait for blood test. Don't tell either yet. Something inside me stopped. Not my heart, my belief in her humanity. I had clung to some thread of doubt, some fragile strand that maybe, just maybe, she was lost or confused or scared. But this was premeditated. She wasn't lost. She wasn't afraid. She was building a lie she could live in comfortably, surrounded by people who believed she was the victim. I stood up slowly, placed the sonogram back in the bag like it was evidence, and returned everything to its place. Every fold, every crease. She'd never know I touched it, and I'd never speak of it, because I didn't need to. Not anymore. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even hate her. I evaluated her, like an equation. And I began building something better than a confrontation. I built a plan. I started by changing my passwords. I opened a new bank account in a different name. I called an attorney, not for a fight, just for information. Quiet, clean, professional. I started documenting everything. Not because I needed proof for court, but because I needed structure. This wasn't chaos. This was war. And wars aren't won with emotion. They're won with patience. I wouldn't scream at her. I wouldn't break things. I would wait. Let her believe I was still trying. Still supportive. Still the loyal, clueless husband. Because people like her, they don't suspect silence. They see it as surrender. But I wasn't surrendering. I was calculating. I was studying. And the next move wouldn't be loud. It would be final. It happened at the baby shower. Not the fake one her friends threw with mason jars and pastel ribbons, but the one my family insisted on hosting, old school, formal, filled with people who actually remembered what loyalty used to mean. She hadn't wanted it. Said it would be too traditional. But she smiled for the pictures, laughed too loud, touched her belly with performative grace, and thanked everyone for the gifts she hadn't even unwrapped. I stood beside her, the supportive husband, hand on her back, nodding along while every word from her mouth scraped like glass against my teeth. I hadn't planned to confront her there. I had waited this long. What was another few days? But then she grabbed the mic. One of her friends had convinced her to say a few words, something sweet, heartfelt. She took the microphone like a woman accepting an award. Smiling, glowing, high on her own performance. I just want to thank everyone for being here, she said, eyes glistening. This baby is a blessing, and I couldn't have done this without the support of my amazing husband. She turned to me, eyes wide with false devotion. You've been so strong, so patient. You've made me feel safe. I stared at her, and something in me cracked, not loud, not wild, just irreversible. The lie was too clean, too polished, and suddenly I couldn't let it stand. So I reached into the envelope I had folded 3 times in my inside pocket and pulled out the sonogram. Not the one from the fridge. The other one. I held it up, not to her, but to the room. This is from October 12th, I said. My voice calm, even. She told me the first scan was on the 26th. But this one she didn't want me to see. A few heads turned. She blinked, still holding the mic, frozen in place. What are you doing? She asked, a tight whisper. I turned to her now. You wrote a note, I said. In your planner. Said not to show me this scan. Said to lie. Because you weren't sure who the father was yet. Murmurs rippled through the guests. I heard my sister gasp. Her smile twitched. Still, she tried. You're misunderstanding. I was just scared. I didn't know how to tell you. Scared. I repeated, almost amused. You scheduled your own deception. You made calendar entries for it. You told another man he might be the father. And you told me I was the only one. She stepped forward now, voice sharpening. You're making a scene. This isn't the place. I nodded. You're right. But you made this the place. When you stood up here and thanked me for a loyalty you never returned. She shook her head. You don't understand. I was alone. You were distant. I didn't know how to ask for what I needed. I tilted my head. You needed honesty. And you chose betrayal. You needed support. And you chose secrecy. You told them things I had to find in your notes. You thanked me for being patient while you build a life I didn't know I wasn't part of. Her voice rose now, brittle with panic. I made mistakes, but this is cruel. I stepped closer, quieter. No. Cruel was pretending to be proud of me while planning to replace me. Cruel was using my name to hide your shame. Cruel was writing a card to another man about being a father while I built a crib for your lie. She tried to interrupt, hands trembling, but I raised the sonogram again. Do you even know whose child this is? I asked. The room went still. Her eyes filled, but not with regret, with exposure. The mask had slipped. Her breath hitched. Please, she whispered. We can talk about this. Not here. I looked around the room, the faces that had watched her perform this entire time. Then back at her. No. Here's perfect. Because this was your stage. You turned me into a prop. So now they get to see what the script really said. She dropped the mic literally. It clattered against the floor with a hollow thud. She turned, started to walk out, then stopped and spun back toward me, voice cracking. You're not so innocent. You were cold, distant. You never really saw me. I didn't flinch. I saw you just fine. I saw the version you wanted me to see. But the real you? I didn't meet her until I found the drawer, the card, the scan. And by then, I realized I wasn't looking at my wife anymore. Just a stranger who wore her face. She staggered back. Someone tried to comfort her. She pushed them away. I didn't follow. I just stood there, watching. And she felt it, that silence, that final blow. Not rage, not vengeance, just indifference. The end of the story she thought she was directing. She found me alone in the hallway behind the venue, just outside the kitchen door, where servers were still pretending not to hear what had happened. Her makeup was streaked, not from tears, but from the collapse of control. She didn't cry like a woman grieving something real. She cried like a gambler who finally realized the table had turned cold. You're overreacting, she said first, her voice raw and brittle. This wasn't fair. You ambushed me. I didn't answer. She stepped closer. You humiliated me. In front of everyone. You couldn't just talk to me like an adult. I met her eyes. I gave you months of silence. That was the adult conversation. You just didn't know you were in it. She flinched, then changed course. You're not so perfect. You think you're above this, like you've never made mistakes? You were never emotionally available. You shut me out for years. I nodded once, slowly. And you took that space and filled it with deception. You could have told me you were unhappy. Instead, you turned me into the villain of a story you wrote behind my back. Her mouth opened, closed, hunting for another angle. You'll never find someone who loves you like I did. I almost smiled. You're right. Because real love doesn't lie. Real love doesn't write cards to another man about a child with my name on the birth certificate. She backed against the wall, breathing uneven. I was scared, she said. I didn't know what to do. I took a step forward, not threatening, just final. You knew exactly what to do. You just didn't think you'd get caught. You didn't plan for consequences. You planned for options. 2 lives, 2 men, 1 safety net. You called it fear. I call it insurance. She laughed once, hollow and sharp. You're so cold now. You used to love me. I stared at her, quiet. I used to love the person I thought you were. Now I don't even recognize your voice. She shook her head, trying to gain traction. I was pregnant, scared, confused. You don't know what that felt like. My voice dropped, lower than before. No, I don't. Because you never let me be part of it. You staged your fear like a performance, with someone else waiting in the wings while I rehearsed lines for a play you never intended to finish. Her hands trembled now. She reached out, but I stepped back. Please, she whispered. Don't throw this away. We were a family. I tilted my head. You threw it away the moment you used my name to shield another man's child. The moment you calculated your lies in a planner instead of a conversation. Her voice broke then, her next words barely audible. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I nodded. But it did. And now you don't get to choose how it ends. Silence bloomed between us. Heavy. I looked at her one last time, not with anger, but with disinterest. That was the wound she hadn't prepared for. Not that I hated her. That I didn't care anymore. That I had nothing left to salvage. She sank to the floor, surrounded by the echo of guests whispering in the other room. I didn't kneel. I didn't comfort. I didn't even look back. Because that silence, that absolute, surgical absence, was the final truth.